pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, so just a couple chamber, I guess for me, only one chamber announcement before we get going is that next week's chamber lunch will be here on our Wednesdays again, but it will be here again at Sunny Point Conference Center, and this will be the candidate forum for our borough mayor elections. I don't have anything else for chamber announcements. Does anybody else want to do some chamber? Chelsea?
My only announcement, I apologize, I'm going to keep talking about this if you've been to the last few lunches. We are looking for people to run for our board of directors. It is a 3-year term that starts January 1st. There are going to be 7 seats open on our board next year. Some of them will be appointed by our incoming president of the board, but there will be 4 that will be decided with an election, and we would like it to be a competitive election, and right now there's only 3 people that have even said they want to run. So it's a really great opportunity to get access to elected officials that you might otherwise not have access to if they're coming through town. It's really a great way to have influence and help the chamber determine what we want to support and the direction we want to go. We have our board meetings once a month. We just purchased Zoom, so we're trying to make it even easier for people to call in. We know that people are busy, but it's a great organization to be a part of. So I would encourage you, if you're interested in getting involved, to do it. And my other announcement is non-chamber related. I'm selling raffle tickets for the Ketchikan Campus Advisory Council, and so I'm just going to kind of pass these around for anyone that might want to support. We're trying to endow our scholarship fund at the $25,000 level, so then we'll have a recurring endowment to give scholarships for local students.
All right, so I'm going to go over just a couple of the rules of the game here, guys, and then I'm actually going to turn it over to Chelsea to be our moderator today. You guys will have a 2-minute introduction, and then you'll also have 2 minutes each to answer the questions that we have prepared for you. If we kind of run through those questions the way that apparently they did last week at the City Council Forum, we will try to open it up to a few audience questions, but then you'll also have a 2-minute closing statement as well. So I will be sitting right up here behind the camera, and I will have flashcards with a 1-minute mark, a 30-second mark, and a 10-second mark so that you guys kind of know where you're at. Chelsea and I both really, really terribly hate cutting people off. It makes me feel like a jerk, so please don't make me, don't make her. Just keep an eye on time, and there we are. Chelsea, hand it over to you.
And one thing we did want to mention for anyone listening on the radio or just folks that have been attending these, all of these questions, the Ketchikan Chamber Board has been coming up with them, and none of the candidates have access to them ahead of time. So we'll start off by giving you your 2 minutes to do a brief introduction. We'll start with you, David.
All right. Well, thank you. And thanks for having me here. I appreciate the opportunity to tell you a little bit about myself and answer some questions. My name is David Landis. I'm currently serving as the borough mayor. I've done that for 5 years. I've been on the assembly prior to that for 6 years. That was 2 terms. So I guess I'm the first one that's termed out of both offices. We do have term limits, and I am reaching the end of my 2nd term as mayor. So I'd like to be elected to the assembly. I'd appreciate your vote doing that. There's a microphone. A little bit more about my experience. I've not only been the mayor and on the assembly, I've served as on the Board of Ethics and chaired that committee. I've also been on the Planning Commission for a couple years, and I've worked as a manager and an executive who reports to a board, which I think gives me a good qualification for having employees, namely the manager and the clerk and the attorney, report to the assembly. I know the issues. I've been here for almost 50 years and watched the community grow. My family lives here. I'm invested in the community, and I know the people and know how to listen well. I'm on the Alaska Municipal League Board of Directors, the National Association of Counties Board, and the Western Interstate Region Board of Directors, and I am a member of Southeast Conference and attend those meetings as well, so I'm pretty plugged into what's going on. I believe strongly in transparency in everything that we do, and ethics. I've been trained as an ethics officer and served as a compliance officer in a large corporation as well, so those things are important to me. As that applies to the borough, of course, the Open Meetings Act and practical experience chairing meetings are all part of my history. So thank you again, and I'd appreciate your vote.
Just going to go down the road here.
Yeah, let's go down the line.
Hello, everybody. My name is Jeremy Bynum. I just want to say thank you for the Chamber for having this opportunity to come and talk with you guys today. Hopefully we get a few tough questions and we can have a dialogue about that. I'd also like to thank those that are sitting up here with me today and wanting to dedicate themselves to serve the public and serve you, the community. And thank you, the participants, for being here today. Those that are here and those that were unable to be here but are following this event. So thank you very much for that. So I'm running because I want to serve this community in a different capacity than I currently serve. I've been in public service my whole career. A little bit of history about myself. I grew up in a small town, logging town, Roseburg, Oregon. And from there, I decided that I wanted to experience a little bit about living in the world. So I joined the United States Air Force. Had the opportunity to travel the world there. And from there, I decided to get into becoming an engineer and get an education, and worked for the Corps of Engineers for many years. Had an opportunity to come to Alaska about 10 years ago and experience what Alaska is and this community, and fell in love with it. And just over 3 years ago, I made this my home. And like I said, I've had the opportunity to travel the world and travel the United States, see lots of different places, and this is where I call home. And I'm hoping that through this opportunity, I can help the community make decisions that is best for our future. Thank you.
I'm going to stand up if that's okay. I just want to thank, I'm Austin Otis. This is my second time running for this position. I was got elected last year almost, and it's nice to see younger faces up here running for office. So just a little bit about myself. I'm in the hospitality industry, and I work for the Inn at Creek Street, and I do a little bit of nonprofit work with Ketchikan Youth Court, KRBD, and the Ketchikan Wellness Coalition. So my background is really in tourism and nonprofit sector. What I really want to focus on this year is three things: tourism, energy, and housing. So with tourism, I think the borough is in a good position owning the public transit system and the planning powers, and I think that we can make some big strides in tourism and help manage these areas. Particularly, tourism is exacerbated by places like Herring Cove and Clam Cove and Ward Cove. They've really put strains on the community, and I think the borough could be a lot more proactive and take the initiative in helping manage tourism. And I think that's really by redesigning and updating our local infrastructure to accommodate and absorb the tourists. So we're thinking like wastewater, sidewalks, and simple things like garbage cans and public restrooms and signage downtown that could help absorb more tourists that come to Ketchikan. Energy-wise, the diesel surcharge impacts local homes and businesses alike. I don't think it's very environmentally clean or economically stable way to produce power in Ketchikan. We are having less rainfall on average, and I think the diesel power is a short-term plan for a long-term issue. It's not good for local businesses, and it's expensive on local homes. So what the borough can do, I think, in this aspect is have a energy feasibility study with the local governments to figure out what kind of alternative energy systems we can have here in the local level. And in housing, the housing assessment came out last year. It proved what we that we all knew along, is that we need more housing. And I think with this, we can provide incentives to contractors, and we can create a planning commission, or a housing commission. Thank you.
All right, thank you. So this question, you'll all have turns going first. So Jeremy, this one will be for you first. In the past year, the Borough Assembly has attempted to raise taxes on individual industries. For example, increasing the hotel bed tax and a specific tax on jewelry stores. Do you support industry-specific taxes, and if so, why?
So obviously, is this still on? You turned it off. Okay. So obviously, when we begin to talk about taxes, we want to talk about what it is that those taxes are going to be funding. So industry-specific taxes, do I support them? The answer is it depends. The outcome has to outweigh the negative impact to that particular business, meaning that whatever tax that we're hoping to implement, whether it's a bed tax in the hotel, I've heard suggestions about fish box taxes for the fishing industry. Whatever those taxes are, the outcome of that tax has to directly benefit the community. And so I think we have to have a public conversation about what that tax might be, how it impacts the industry, and then what is the outcome of collecting that tax, and how does it benefit us as a whole. So whatever it is, we have to be able to have a positive impact on this community as a whole, and it has to positively affect a good future for not just us here and now, but what is the impact going to be to our families and to our children. So it's a big depends. I don't want to see something that's going to come in and negatively impact business that then has a long-term negative impact on growth or a negative impact on our ability to fund those services which we need.
Your turn. Awesome.
Can you repeat the question?
Yes. In the past year, the Borough Assembly has attempted to raise taxes on individual industries. For example, increasing the hotel bed tax and a specific tax on jewelry stores. Do you support industry-specific taxes, and if so, why?
So I work in the hospitality industry, and we were going to be affected by the hotel bed tax, and I was originally against that. I think the sales tax cap increase was a good neutral measure for all industries to be increased upon. If we look at the sales tax cap, I think it's a good cushion from the state budget cuts that have been pushed down onto the local level. With a 50% school bond reimbursement debt cut by the governor, and the fish tax by around $350,000. I think these are good measures to help cushion the blow from the state cost-shifting measures down to the local level. And a sales tax cap doesn't necessarily affect locals. When we're talking about this, these are items over $1,000. We're talking like refrigerators and beds, and think of how many times you actually go out and buy those products. 5 years or so. This is really focused more on tourism than anything. So I do like the approach that the borough has taken in the sales tax cap region. So.
That's a very good question, actually. I have in front of me a briefing book, and the pages I'm looking at are actually on the strategic plan. And one of the areas is vibrant economy. So looking through all of the goals related to the vibrant economy, I don't see anything about differential impacts or differential tax rates or targeting certain industries. It's all about growing industries. And I think generally we ought to talk more about how to facilitate the economic development of the community rather than how to target one industry or another. Now that being said, there could be some industries, and I'm not saying that the ones that you mentioned are those or not, that have unique impacts on the community, and that ones that could be more properly sharing more with the rest of the community. And again, I think that's a good way to discuss some of those impacts, but generally, I don't think that we need to be targeting specific industries.
All right, so Austin, this will be your question first. What do you see as the largest challenge the borough is currently facing, and how would you approach this issue?
Yeah, so I think it's housing. As a young person, I want to invest in this community, and it's very hard for me to purchase home in the community. Really, I think a good predictor for a healthy economy is stable housing market. There's a housing feasibility study that highlighted the need for more affordable single-family units and multi-units, such as duplexes, apartment buildings in the borough. With a huge influx of seasonal workers and our aging population, and young local residents such as myself who want to invest in the community, I think the borough needs to take the initiative in taking what the housing assessment needs, the CHAP, talked about, and implementing those. And I think you really do that by having a housing commission. I know that term has been thrown around by the planning department. You see larger cities creating housing commissions due to urbanization and more overpopulation of these cities. So, and I know people's eyes tend to glaze over when we discuss new commissions, and they just talk and don't provide a lot of strategies. But I think a housing commission can be a good way to tackle the housing deficiencies that we here have on the local level. The need for affordable housing, if we're going to care for our aging population, like I said, needs to be an initiative by the borough. Another problem that you have is contractors, the expensiveness of building homes. The borough can provide, I think, certain property tax breaks for new developments in the subdivisions. Can help developers with road costs in the new service areas. I think Waterfall is a good example of that. And the borough can also sell off land at a reasonable rate to new developers to produce new homes. So I think it's a multifaceted approach. It's a housing commission to create plans and strategies to help with the housing crisis that we have on the local level, and having the borough give incentives to local contractors to build homes for people like myself that want to invest in the community. So.
David will be next.
Okay. The greatest challenge I think that we face over the next several years is going to be the one that we've faced for the last few years. And that's really our state budget woes and how that reflects on our local community. How we respond to those things, both on the expense side and the revenue side. We need to reduce expenses to the greatest extent we can. We need to wisely use the resources that we do have available to us. I think that we've done a very good job the last several years in keeping some money tucked away that we can use for a rainy day, and that's a rainy day. This is a pretty tough budget climate in the state of Alaska, so that's going to be an ongoing thing. I think that we're going to be talking about that more and more as this administration in the state goes on, and when we see impacts that we have to our local community. The Borough Assembly has done a great job the last couple of years in maintaining our 5 mil property tax. I would hate to see that go up because we're not able to fund the kinds of things that the state is pushing down to local communities on a continuing basis. And advocacy in Juneau, relationship with our state legislators and with those that hold the purse strings in Juneau is going to be important. I do have that experience. I'm willing to do whatever it takes to help the community get through this hard time.
So, wow, what a big question that is. The biggest issue facing the borough and the community, it's a multifaceted question. So there's lots of things that we're directly being faced with, whether it's tourism, cost of housing, or the issues with funding. They all relate back to that one central theme of communication and collaboration with the different agencies that the borough has to interact with, whether that's the city, the state, or the federal government. So one of the biggest things we're facing, as Mr. Landis had said, is our budgets. And how is it that we can maintain stable budgets and revenues to ensure that we have appropriate funding for education, that we have appropriate funding for our different planning elements to help direct tourism, that we have the appropriate funding to make sure that we keep capable workforce within the borough, and also ensure that we strive for capable workforce within Ketchikan. You know, having a good qualified workforce is one of those things that will help with affordable housing, get incomes up, bring industry in. But all that takes the element of appropriate funding levels and appropriate planning and development with the borough.
Would it go that way for the next question?
Yes,
Okay.
I think Jeremy answers, I actually lost track.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Jeremy answers the next one
Oh,
first. Yeah.
Roger, okay.
Okay, so what do you see as one of the greatest opportunities for the borough, and how would you take advantage of this opportunity?
One of the biggest opportunities that we face is, like I just said, was that the opportunity to see that there's change in our community and to work with the community and our partners at the city and within the state to try to develop a long-term plan that focuses on positive impact for our future. Whether that's, like I said earlier, with the tourism, that's a big thing that we're talking about right now. And so one of the questions is what can the borough do directly related to tourism? Well, they have the mandate for planning and development. And we can work with the community to come up with good plans for how is it that the tourism is going to affect us, how is it we can collaborate and work with those other agencies to come up with a good development plan. I think that it's an opportunity for that collaboration and communication, and that we can work together to come up with these hard solutions to solve these problems. It's also an opportunity for us to work with the community to solve the housing issue that we have and say, what is it that we have to do? How can the borough be an actual solution in that problem? Because the borough alone can't solve that problem. The borough alone can't solve the tourism issue. The borough alone can't solve the taxation or a collecting of revenues. But we can be a collaborative body to work together with the community, private industry, and the city to come up with strategic plans to help solve those issues.
Yeah, like I said, I lost track, and I don't think you
I
were
could
supposed to
go.
go first
Oh.
that time, but we're still
Okay.
roll with it.
Yeah, and I agree with Jeremy. I think the greatest opportunity is collaboration with the other governments that we have here in the community. We're fractured because we have separate governments, and I think collaboration in response to tourism, which is at the forefront of our issues in the community, would be beneficial. And the borough has huge opportunities when it comes to the bus transit system, moving people and capital around the community, and like again Jeremy said, planning powers. You saw some chaos out at the Herring Cove subdivision, and you saw some issues over at Clam Cove. The borough can develop these neighborhood plans to help better organize tourism that really encroach on the local residents out in these outlying areas. We've been focused so much on the docks that we've kind of lost sight of what we need to have on the upland infrastructure to help accommodate and absorb tourists. Like I said, something as simple as signs or garbage cans and public restrooms can help absorb these tourists and make it a more livable space for both us and them to come. So I think the borough has huge opportunities in tourism, but I think at the root of all of that is energy. If we don't have a good source of energy, we will not have good housing, we'll have expensive housing, and we'll have overbearing of tourism on our local community. So I think the borough can't do much about energy, but I think they can pair, talking about the communication and collaboration with the city government, to have a energy feasibility study to understand what we can have for energy in this community. So.
Thanks for the question. It's a good one. I don't know how many have been involved, of you have been involved in strategic planning exercises, but a lot of times, you go through these strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats. Many times the same things can be challenges or threats that can be opportunities. And thinking through this, as Jeremy and Austin have answered, I really think that I don't disagree with anything they've said. And actually, Jeremy mentioned housing. I think housing is a great opportunity for us to really shine as a community. And we have some structure as to how we can approach that. The housing assessment has shown us some of that, and also past experience has shown us the development at Waterfall was done as a borough project that I think was very successful. That was the borough put in the infrastructure and the roads, and sold the lots off and increased the tax base. That's a big deal. The borough also has a significant inventory of land that is being sold. You can see some of that development out there by the viewpoint out north. That's borough land that was sold to private developers, and that's being developed right now. The affordable housing side really needs some help. But we've seen some of the private developers respond to that as well. Mr. Heaton out south of town has some ideas on the local improvement district that he's done. So I think housing is a great opportunity, and it's one that we can all work on and be proud of.
All right, next question, and I think it's your turn to answer first, David. I apologize, I think we skipped you, that's what happened. And this has already been touched on by several of you, but I think we're looking for kind of maybe specific ideas you might have. With several of the moves made by state government this year, there has been an increased cost shift to local governments to provide community resources. How do you propose to address these local cost increases?
Well, I think we have to push back to the state. I think that's where collaborations between communities throughout the state can have an effect. That's where I think that the Alaska Municipal League and Southeast Conference and other organizations that are really in touch with politics on the local level, on municipal activities and municipal governments, make a big difference. Our state representative is here with us today, and I'm sure he's listening, and he has responded. He's fought very hard for this community, as well as other communities in Alaska, to make sure that the state really understands. I think that this kind of advocacy has helped us in the past. I think that the reason why the sweeping vetoes were largely pushed back was because of communities and organizations like the AML, like Southeast Conference, like the communities in this island, Saxman, the city of Ketchikan, and the Ketchikan Gateway Borough, united in making sure that our state government knows that these types of cuts are unacceptable. There's strength in numbers. Again, I serve on the AML Board of Directors. We talk about these things, we enact resolutions, we push back to the government, and that kind of advocacy can't be overstated. It really does make a difference. So I hope to be back in office and picking up where I left off in that regard.
Who we go first? I can jump in if you like.
Sure.
All right, let's just do it. So where is it that we can focus with these additional costs that we're facing as a community? I agree with Mr. Landis that pushback with representation within the state is to say, how is it that we can make practical steps forward with making sure that we're funding our communities in an appropriate way? You know, this is kind of an interesting thing, is that in government, we always look toward, or I felt that the people always look toward the federal government for the first solution. Then they look for the state government for second solution. And then way down at the bottom of the list is local government for solutions. But this is the beautiful thing about that we have the opportunity here today to talk about is that what happens at our local government is directly influencing and impacting our lives. So one of the things that we have to do is we have to prioritize what's important to us as a community, whether that's education and making sure that we provide the best schools with the help from the state for funding, but with our local money of saying we need to make sure that we're taking care of our schools and our kids. That's our future. And that translates into making sure we have a capable workforce and an environment for a positive industry for growth and income. And then we can research practical ways of developing new revenue streams within our community to help fund those things. So it's an effort of collaboration amongst ourselves about what it is that we want. What do we want for our community? And then how do we fund it? So it's a great opportunity for us to work together. And that's what I see that with these budget issues that we're seeing here, is how important our community governments are to us and how we work together to make sure that they work for us in a positive way and our future.
Yeah, so the governor's cuts were pretty devastating. Looking at them, it attacked so many different industries in Southeast, whether that be the Alaska Marine Highway System, the tourist industry with the Sea Ranger program, the 50% school bond reimbursement debt cuts, which directly impacted education, and the fish industry of $350,000, taking that away from our fish taxes here locally. So the cost-shifting measures are great on the community, but like I've said previously, that I think that the borough took a good initiative when increasing the sales tax cap, which will help cushion some of the blows that the governor has shifted down to our community. I think an increased seasonal sales tax in the downtown area will help also cushion some of those blows. You know, we have this amazing industry of 1.3 million people that come here every year, and I don't think we're getting the true potential out of it. I think it's being avoided that we increase taxes on this industry. We need to have it to a level that it doesn't deter the industry, but forcing these cuts onto the local level through property taxes, I think, is very regressive towards locals. And I'd just like to see the industries that support the community help pay for the community. And I think we can do that through the sales tax cap.
All right, so that actually comes to the end of the questions we had prepared. There's a little bit more time. So I'm going to make the decision again to take 2 questions from the audience. So first come, first serve. If you have a question, now is your time to ask it. So I saw Jackie and then Spencer. So Jackie, you can ask your question first.
So how do you feel about one government instead of 2? I'm asking now each of you.
And I'm going to repeat that question into the microphone for the benefit of the TV and the radio. Jackie's question was, how do you feel about one government versus 2, which I think you're referencing combining the borough and city, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
All right, and I think Austin, this is going to be yours first.
Okay. Yeah, so I'm not very old, so I don't know how many times we've actually tried combining the governments, but I know it's failed every single time that we've done it. I don't know when the last time we voted on it. I wasn't old enough to vote on it. But, you know, you would have to provide an incentive for the borough to join the city, because right now that the taxes are unequal, and people in the borough don't want to pay the same taxes that people in the city. So I think it's kind of a fruitless endeavor to combine the governments, though I agree with it. The efficiencies I think would be great, but at this time we've tried it and it's failed every single time, and that's insanity. So, I mean, unless something changes that we want the governments to combine, I just don't think the voters in the borough are going to vote for it. So.
Myself
And-
next, or?
Sure.
All right.
Take it next.
All right. I know this is something that has been an endeavor for many years, that it's been discussed about consolidation. And I think that there's some of those that are for it, and there's those that are against it. And I don't know that it's a viable thing that we actually try to pursue right now until we can with that being said, is that one of the things that would affect the borough as a whole by having consolidated government is levelizing expense or cost across the board for all citizens that live here. I mean, obviously, if you live in the borough, you do shop in town and you have influence of what town has to offer. One of the things that was talked about here was energy and how energy affects us on a daily basis. But those in the borough feel that they have no voice on energy because the local utility is owned by the city. And so those voters don't get a say, really, on what happens with our energy climate on the island. So there's some arguments to be made that could say there's positive impact or benefit from having consolidated government. But I think as of right now, I think that's a bigger conversation to be had. I think there's a lot of other things that are facing us that we need to tackle. And I just think that this consolidation, although there may be pros, there's also there's a downside to it as well, as far as getting everybody together and collaborating on what it is that they need. And I think that we should be tackling some of those other big issues that are facing us before we want to bring this kind of a topic back up again.
I knew this would come up. It always does. Yeah, this, and Austin mentioned it, it has come up again and again and again. And when it has come up, it's been, in my observation, mostly when the borough and the city are seeming to fight with each other, having squabbles over or this or that. And I'm happy to say that this isn't that time. I don't think that the city and the borough have ever enjoyed such a good relationship as they have right now. And that's a good thing. We work well together. I think not only on the city council and borough assembly and the mayor level, but also on the administrative level with the borough manager and his staff and the city manager. So I don't think there's a big reason for it. Currently, there are separate responsibilities that each government has. They're pretty well defined. You can pick things out like fire departments. You know, we have, I guess, between the two governments, we have 4 fire departments. That's a little much, I guess, but yeah, there's the airport, North Tongass, South Tongass, and the city fire department. So we got a lot of fire departments, but yeah. So there are little things here and there, but I don't think there's a big reason for it now, and I'm encouraged by that because we're getting along.
All right, this next one, Jeremy will take first, or no, David.
Okay.
Right, yeah, David, and it's gonna be Spencer.
I've been waiting to ask this question for quite some time now, and I promise everybody to be patient with me. I time myself, and it only takes about 2 minutes and 15 seconds to get these 2 questions explained out.
All right.
It won't take that long. The tobacco tax has been an utter failure, as evidenced by our inability to collect a legal tax for nearly the first 2 years of it. We cast such a wide net that we implicated the marijuana industry and a bunch of other stuff by putting the tax on batteries and all kinds of other stuff that weren't in there by definition. We also eliminated a 15% goal. We had a 15% goal to do something with that money good for the folks that we were taking it from. And so now what we've done is eliminated that 15% goal, and we're taxing one little population of people for a service in the schools that we should all be paying the burden for. And then my final one is the absence of enforcement in the marketplace. There's no way to enforce any of this in the marketplace. So if the fair guy's paying the tax and someone else isn't, you've created an unfair marketplace, and I can assure you that's what's happening already. My 2 questions are this, and it's a little bit different for folks who are sitting on the borough and folks who are going to come to one of those seats. You could answer maybe your support if you're coming to one of those seats, or you could justify your ratification for putting it out to the voter if you've already sat on one of those seats. And the second question was the question I asked a few years ago when no one answered me. And since I'm the guy that was made to collect that money for my friends, family, and neighbors, I asked, how do we give that money back after we illegally collected it? I never got an answer. So the second part of that question is, how do we give that money back?
So I get to go first, huh?
Can I have a clarification?
I'm sorry for the extra
No,
passion a
that's,
little bit.
that's
Hold on,
okay,
Austin, you can
Spencer.
ask-
Just clarification, the giving the money back, the tobacco tax taken from you to give it back, is that what your question
We'll
was?
give the illegal money we collected back to the folks that.
The illegal
we
money,
collected
meaning
from.
your the tobacco tax stuff?
Yeah.
Okay.
Or any other illegal
Okay.
money that we collected. I'll just,
Rather than,
I didn't know.
Duly noted.
All right.
rather than fully endorse the idea that the borough has collected an illegal tax, I will acknowledge there's certainly a debate there. That's probably a legal question. Did I? That's probably a.
This one might be long enough.
That's probably a question that demands a legal conclusion, so I'm not going to try to parse that. But I will say, and Spencer, I know that you came to the assembly and sitting as the mayor, of course, I didn't have a vote on the tax, but nevertheless, I heard what you said. I didn't disagree with it, and particularly with the 15% not going to a assistance program for smoking cessation. I'm quite disappointed in that. We had viable offers that we could have taken up, and it's too bad that we didn't do that. I'm disappointed.
So I'll try to jump in here. I just want to make sure that it's real clear on what your question actually is. My understanding is that you're asking, since I wasn't involved with this, that do I support it?
Yes,
Okay. And then the next question is how would it give that money back?
yes.
Okay, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. So we kind of talked on this a little bit about industry-specific taxes earlier. And my viewpoint on industry-specific taxes is that the tax has to benefit the community as a whole. So with regard to this particular topic of tobacco taxes, I would support a tobacco tax only under a certain circumstance, and that is that money is used to benefit the community in two ways. One, education for prevention, okay? That could be, it's primarily focused on school-age kids and our youth, so we have a healthier future. Number two, that money is used specifically for helping the community with health-related issues. So anytime we want to collect a tax with regard to alcohol, tobacco, those kinds of things, they have to have a positive impact on the community as a whole. That's my perspective. So to answer your second part of the question is, how do we give that money back? And we give it back directly through those programs which I just said, education and through health benefit, okay? So like I said, I'm not going to make a legal determination on whether it's illegally collected or not. Like I said, I wasn't involved with how the taxes were implemented. However, I can say that on the Borough Assembly, I would fight to advocate for us to use cigarette taxes or tobacco taxes or any tax that we collect in an appropriate fashion to benefit our community as a whole and protect our future.
So as someone that works in the substance abuse nonprofit sector, Ketchikan Youth Corps, we focus on kids that have tobacco or other drug-related issues. I was disappointed that the 15% was not allocated for certain nonprofits and cessation programs that help youth in particular. You know, I think the tobacco tax was a decent funding mechanism for education, but I think it was unfairly implemented on industries such as yourself. You know, I don't think it does much to deter smoking, but I think it was a good mechanism to provide funding for cessation programs that help youth get off of cigarettes and other substance abuses.
Did you want to close it?
All right, so we will go ahead and start with Jeremy, and you will give your closing statements.
All right. Well, I promise to try to keep this within the 2-minute limit. There's been a lot talked about today. We've talked about what are some of the big issues facing us, what are our biggest opportunities, and how is it that we want to work together. So whether I'm elected or not, my goal is to continue to work with my community members, whether it be on energy. We've heard a little bit about that today and what we can do at the borough level for energy, whether it be funding for schools or workforce. My goal is that we create an atmosphere of collaboration and a community voice about what it is that we want to do. And I want to bring my experience of years of working in public service, working on whether it's a federal level, state level, community level, of trying to make the best decisions that we can make. One of the analogies I like to give with public service is that it's kind of like being a basketball official. I've been a basketball official for over 20 years, officiated many games here for K-High, and one of the things that you have to face is that you're not always going to make the popular call. Sometimes people are going to be frustrated with you in the moment, but you have to do what's right. You have to do what's best for the game. You have to do what's best for the community in that sense of translating into public life. So I can promise that I will always try to do what's right. I can't promise that it'll always be popular. But that's part of the job, is trying to do the right thing. And so I'm going to say I hope to get your vote. I hope that I can make a positive influence on us now for our future. I just want to say I appreciate the time that you guys have given us today to speak, and appreciate you guys for giving us good ideas and having a collaborative conversation about what it is we can do to solve our future problems and work together.
Okay. You know, if our form of government is supposed to reflect the people that it represents, I think my huge advocacy is getting younger people to have a voice in local government. You know, I know I'm young and inexperienced, but the only way to become experienced, I think, is to run for office, is to get involved in local politics and engage with the community. You know, everyone talks about what we can do to keep youth in the community, and I think the borough has huge powers in enabling younger people to stay in the community. You know, I grew up in a post-pulp mill generation, and I see the relics of the past that have really put an eyesore on the community. And the borough has a lot of potential to improve areas, like I highlighted in my points, with tourism, energy, and most importantly, housing. So the borough should take initiatives on these, and I look forward to, if elected, I look forward to helping younger people get involved in politics and have a voice in the community.
Well, I'd also like to say thank you to those in attendance and to the Chamber for having this opportunity, and to the community for allowing us to do what we're doing here. I'm enthusiastic about Ketchikan and its future. I think that we have a lot to look forward to. I think our best days are ahead of us. I don't think you have any bad choices sitting up here in front of you. I think that that all of us offer maybe a little bit different, but certainly very adequate representation for the community on the Borough Assembly. So I don't think you have bad choices. Now, that being said, I, among the three of us, have a lot of experience doing this. I'm not sure if everyone thinks that's important. I do. I think that having folks that are aware of what's going on and have been there when the times have gotten tough and had a proven track record, that's important. The two seats that are open for the Assembly are the ones held by Mr. Dial and Ms. McQuarrie. Neither of them ran for re-election, so you're going to have at least one new person here and a brand new mayor. So I think it's important that you have experience. I enjoy public service. I like to help people solve problems. I've got a track record, and you can hold me to that. And I appreciate it when you do. I like to answer people's questions and to help figure out solutions. So I'd appreciate your vote. October 1st is the day, and again, my name is David Landis, and I'd like to be your next Borough Assembly person. Thank you.
All right, thank you everyone for coming. Carrie, did you have Lucky Lunchbox tickets today?